watching the election from home.
MS Now's Rosa Flores is reporting from Arizona, a state that has been a hotbed of election conspiracies. Also with us, Rick Stengel, an MS Now political analyst, former Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs in the Obama administration. Chuck Rocha, a Democratic strategist and former senior advisor to the Bernie Sanders presidential campaign. So, Rick, he either thinks he actually changed the outcomes of the election or he is lying. Which is worse?
They're both pretty bad. I mean, I don't even like to use his framing on this bill. I mean, it's a voter suppression bill. And even when he called Brad Raffensperger about, can you get me those votes, it was obvious he wasn't saying, can you find the discrepancy here? Can you find the fraud? He's actually doesn't think that there's fraud. He just has an outcome that he doesn't agree with and then tries to change it. So this is the sort of thing we've been talking about for years, where this is a norm that you can't call, that the President of the United States can't call a U.S. attorney. But he thinks he can because he thinks they're all his lawyers. These are the kinds of things that have to change in the next administration.
My friend Simone Sanders Townsend always says every accusation is an admission. And the accusation from the Trump administration was that there had been foul play in the California elections. It would seem, based on what he's saying, the only true effort to potentially tinker with the results, if you take the president at his words, which he is saying on stage into a microphone with an entire press bring to hear, is that he did, in fact, try to influence the outcome of this election.
Yeah, he put it right on tape and said, I made a phone call to see. And anybody who knows about counting votes in California knows it just takes a minute to take them in. But I had said earlier, and I've said all along this week, that he's setting a pattern that's disturbing, is that he knows that the midterms are setting up to be an absolute disaster for him. And he's trying to get ahead of it so he can point to different things to say, see, especially his base, I told you, so he could put doubt in our democracy, which at its core is really scary at Rick's point. Like, this is something that's very serious, but he knows he's probably going to lose the House, and there's a chance he could lose the Senate. And when those elections are over, he wants to look in the camera and go, see, I told you, it was kind of like California. I just step in here and they stole it.
Well, can I just piggyback real quickly on the conversation we were having with Senator Warren, which is Donald Trump can say that affordability is a word that Democrats made up. Right. But it is very clear based on that vote that a lot of Senate and House Republicans know that it is not, in fact, a word that Democrats made up. It is a word that they are hearing from their constituents every time that they are in district. They had an opportunity to deliver something they could actually run on in November, and Donald Trump decided that was not as important as his Save America Act.
He pulled it right out from underneath them. They were all going to sit down, and he pulled the chair away. There's one thing that House Republicans and Senate Republicans have in common is they're desperate to talk about affordability. They're desperate to talk about housing. They're desperate to talk about anything that the president ain't talking about, which is a war or some other crazy thing, the reflecting pool, whatever the issue of the day is. Donald Trump has not been talking about affordability.
Okay, so Rosa, the reason we wanted to talk about you, because amidst all of this, you were in Arizona, which has been the epicenter of election conspiracy theories, but you have a county that is actually fighting back against misinformation. They are giving voters a behind-the-scenes look at just what happens to their ballots. Tell us what you found in Arizona.
Well, what officials here are trying to do, they're trying to restore trust in the ballot box, in their vote. And so what they're doing is they're offering behind-the-scenes tours of the elections office, and they show voters the chain of custody of a ballot. Where does the ballot go? They show the voters, okay, here's where we received the ballot, here's the tabulation room, here is where the ballot is secured. And also, Alicia, they show them that the machines are not connected to the internet, that there is a server room, and that server room is secure. And also, if people have any doubts, they also talk about how the design of the building is with transparency in mind. There are observatory hallways, and what that means is that these rooms have giant windows for the public, for credentialed observers, for the press, to be able to observe the tabulation, to be able to observe every single part of this process, to be transparent with the public so that they understand that nobody's trying to mess with their votes, that they're just doing their job. And if there is any question about what these individuals, these poll workers are doing, there are also surveillance cameras that are live streamed, that anybody at home can sit at their computer and watch every minute of the process if they'd like. I also talked to a poll worker, and I asked her what questions she gets from voters about election integrity. Take a listen.
There's always questions after elections. Well, how do you know there's no tampering? I said, because there's always checks and balances in what we do. No one is allowed to go into sites unaccompanied. There's usually 2 or more people. Everything is locked. There's cameras that people can log into and people can view as we're running the polling or the voting forms through the system. There's cameras available to log into, and people can see that there's no issues or nothing's being done with your vote.
And that's the point of these tours, Alicia. It's the transparency part. And so these election officials are trying to restore trust, one voter, one tour at a time, to make sure that people here in Arizona believe that their vote counts and that the process is transparent.
Rick, it feels in this conversation about election integrity that it's a lot of 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Because even as you have local officials in Arizona making this incredible effort, I mean, I want to go take a tour, right? Exactly. Don't you? I would love to see the process that a ballot goes through. I would love to see, I'm excited that there are people who are so interested in American democracy and our system of elections that they want to take time to go tour an election facility. Maybe that becomes a silver lining of this entire terrible period. That said, what you have right now is Donald Trump trying to make changes to the Postal Service that would change the outcome of elections. You have Democrats sounding the alarm. They're now requiring states to submit the names and addresses of every voter receiving mail or absentee ballots, something that Democrats said would give the USPS the ultimate authority to decide which Americans can cast a ballot.
You know, I'm going to get to that in 1 second. The Arizona story is fantastic because that could be a model for other states. Increased transparency, that's something we've talked about for years. I've been an election poll worker twice because I wanted to see it myself in Columbia County, New York. There's so many checks and balances. It's just crazy. But people don't believe what authorities tell them anymore. This disdain for Congress, for all institutions, is down. There was a Pew poll earlier this year that showed Americans trust each other less than citizens in any other Western democracy. So what we're seeing with the post office is also another strange, convoluted version of our politics, because it was the Republican Party once that was afraid of big government, that wouldn't allow the federal government to even have the names of people in the states. Donald Trump now wants to nationalize the election system in order to corrupt it, but for the federal government to control it. I mean, that goes against every single instinct in our American system. And the Constitution says that elections are governed by the states. And one reason all this stuff is not very popular with Republicans is because they like to have their own elections and govern their states. In red states, they want to manage it themselves. They don't want the federal government to manage it. So it's convoluted, it's corrupt, and he wants to steal the election.
I should just say, filing this under, there are ways to push back. Whenever there's a rule change like this, there is a period of public commentary. Americans can write in right now and say that they don't like this, they don't approve of this. There is a hearing happening this afternoon on Capitol Hill with the Postmaster General. Lots of questions for him